One of the most mysterious creatures in the Bible that is really hard to understand, whether it existed or not, is the Leviathan. We have 5 explicit references in the Bible mentioning the name Leviathan, 2 in the book of Job, 2 in the Psalms, and 1 in Isaiah. When we look at the verses dealing with Leviathan, we encounter apparent contradictions that we need to understand very well. On the other hand, in the book of Genesis, on the 5th day of creation, it is written that God created the enormous Tanninim. Who are these enormous Tanninim that later disappear from the Bible? According to most commentators, these Tanninim are indeed the Leviathan. Although your Bible may not say Tanninim, we are learning from the original biblical Hebrew. The Tanninim, commentators say, and the Leviathan are actually the same thing. God created 2 very large Tanninim. There is no other creation mentioned that is so great that God removes it from his work. Later, we will understand the reason for this. In the book of Job, God shows his great power to Job. He asks if Job can take a fishing rod and catch the Leviathan. Of course he cannot, because the description of Leviathan in the book of Job is terrifying. Some of the expressions in the book of Job reveal this. If you lay a hand on it, you will remember the struggle and never do it again, God reveals to Job. Trying to overcome it is an illusion. It is impossible to defeat this Leviathan. But why would Job want to fight the Leviathan if it is just a sea creature? Because, as we mentioned, it was created on the 5th day when birds and all aquatic animals, or those living near water like reptiles, were created. Job is facing something powerful and gigantic. The description of Leviathan in the book of Job becomes even more terrifying. Who dares to open the jaws of the Leviathan? They are surrounded by fearsome teeth. Its back has rows of shields, tightly sealed together, so close that no air can pass between them. Its strong breaths emit flashes of light, and its eyes are like the rays of dawn, shining to the point of blinding those who stare at them. Sparks fly from its mouth, and flames of fire leap out. Its snorting throws out flashes of light, like breaths of boiling pot over reeds. We are faced with a terrifying creature, and God shows this to Job. In the end, God shows his power, affirming that nothing on earth compares to him, the Leviathan, a fearless creature. He looks with contempt on all the proud. He is king over all that are proud. So here we see immense power, but how can a sea creature fight against the proud? Is it an animal with some special consciousness? We've never heard of such a thing. God is showing that this is one of his creations, so powerful that no one can come near it. Who can be like God, the Creator himself? We've seen a detailed description of the Leviathan, but what is written in the Psalms? In Psalm 104, we see that the Leviathan is one of the creatures formed by God to play in the sea. If it's such a terrible creature, why would God play with the Leviathan? Is it good? Is it evil? Does it have consciousness? Does it not? Where is the Leviathan? Archaeologists have never found the Leviathan or anything like it. In the book of Isaiah, we see that God, with his severe, long and strong swords, will punish the Leviathan, the swift and twisted serpent, killing the sea serpent in the sea. Here we see that the Leviathan is described as a sea serpent, and God will avenge it. Why does God need to avenge the Leviathan? We have many questions and few answers. Let's put things in order to clearly understand what the Leviathan is. On one hand, we need to understand that God has various creations. He has spiritual creations, like angels, and also creates physical representations of spiritual beings, like the Leviathan. The Leviathan is one of these representations. God creates both spiritual and physical things, and often something physical has a spiritual representation, and vice versa. The Leviathan falls into this category. An example of this is the creation of water mentioned in Genesis. God creates water, in the firmament lower waters and upper waters. What are the upper waters? Although it is superficially understood to refer to rainwater, the book of Proverbs brings a deeper understanding. Water, for example, has a representation of wisdom. Sometimes King Solomon says, "Let anyone who is thirsty come to the water." But that's obvious. King Solomon is talking about anyone who thirsts for knowledge, who should seek the water of the Bible, where true knowledge resides, unmatched by any other. So water has a physical representation, but also a spiritual one. Human beings have body and soul, as is explicitly written in the book of Ecclesiastes. Therefore, we have something physical and something spiritual. The Leviathan falls exactly into this category. It has a physical existence, as it was created on the fifth day, but was removed from creation. Soon we will understand why. What is the spiritual representation of the Leviathan? On one hand, it is seen as a terrible giant monster, which a single human being could not dominate, hunt, or defeat. On the other hand, it is considered an object with which God plays. Is this a pet of God? In fact, the Leviathan in the Bible is the representation of evil, possessing various characteristics. It is no coincidence that the book of Job, for example, mentions the Leviathan's nostrils. Why do we need to know exactly what its nostrils are like? Because, for example, when smoke comes out of the nostrils, it is a representation of anger. The wicked are ruled by hatred, by anger. They have teeth they use to bite, as we see in stories of people who wanted to harm others with their teeth. Each description of the Leviathan speaks of a different aspect of evil. Human beings, as they contemplate this evil, realize that God created it so that there would be free will. Now you are understanding that the Leviathan is completely an abstract concept. Forget the idea of a physical Leviathan created on the fifth day. Now we are talking about something completely spiritual. And you will understand how evil operates in the lives of each one of us, and in fact, in the whole world. Each of these aspects described by Job represents an aspect of evil within each one of us and throughout the world. That's why, on one hand, we see God's vengeance against the Leviathan. There will come a time when God will extinguish evil from humanity, from the world. That is God's vengeance. Of course, the Leviathan is a creation of God. This vengeance is a human expression to explain that God will put an end to evil in the world. In the end times, there will be no more evil. With the coming of the Messiah, the world will become a world of goodness. Therefore, the Leviathan in its representation will cease to exist in that spiritual form. So, is God playing with the Leviathan in the waters of the sea? The idea is that God has control over the Leviathan. The Leviathan is one of God's works, and he uses it to accomplish his purposes in the world. Therefore, playing is a metaphorical expression that means God is controlling the world. Once again, it is a metaphorical expression that suggests that it is as if it were a game, a play. And to God, the Leviathan, which seems so powerful to human eyes, is nothing more than a puppet, a toy. It has no strength if that strength does not come from God. Now, see something interesting. We talked about a physical representation of the Leviathan. Why? Because the Zohar says the following: God took the Leviathan, which is an animal of proportions we can't even imagine, and will prepare from this Leviathan a meal for the righteous, who will receive eternal reward. What does this mean? It means that righteous people who have faith in God, who follow the biblical precepts, even when they see evil in the world, even when other people try to influence them with pagan ideas, with idolatry ideas, or saying that it is not worth following the precepts, are people who can fight with God's help against this evil. Figuratively, they will eat the flesh of the Leviathan, which was created to present evil. These people are the ones who actually managed to dominate the Leviathan. This is their reward, because the Leviathan, after all, is what brought them closer to God. This struggle they fought, again, with God's help, because without God's help, we enter Job's description, where we cannot defeat it. Therefore, these people deserve to be close to God. So, the meal is the Leviathan. We deserve this reward because we have been faithful to God at all times. This is the true explanation in the Bible about this mysterious animal that is the Leviathan. What do you think about the Leviathan? Leave your comment. Now, 2 videos full of curiosities are appearing on your screen. Click on one of them and go, watch. Do it now.